Now, Africa's sporting future roars with untapped potential. I imagine soaring stadiums echoing with cheers, world-class training facilities nurturing dreams, and locally made sports good fueling African talent on the global stage. The vision drives the Sports African Investment Summit 2025, a groundbreaking event bringing together visionary investors, passionate sports leaders, and innovative minds to ignite an era of growth. And joining us today to talk about the investment summit and how it tends to change the trajectory of sports in Nigeria is NkechiObi, one of the visionaries of the summit, and more importantly, the chairperson of the Nigeria Women Football League. I want to say thank you very much for honoring us today.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's always a pleasure to come here and talk sports with you, particularly sports that has to do with how we can scale up and sustainably develop the industry. Okay,
so you've been around the block for a while, and I wanted to start with the Women's League, but
please do.
No, but permit me, because of time. You have
yes.
Maybe before we end the discussion, we'll talk about the Women's League. Permit me to look. I want to get your thoughts about the change, because there's a wind of change blowing in sports right now.
Exactly.
And give me your thoughts about where we are right now, because a lot of people, we've heard from so many people, some have said what has happened with the nomenclature change, or probably the metamorphosis from the Ministry of Sports to the Sports Commission is good. Some have said it's bad. Some have poked holes in it. What's your thoughts about this?
For me, it's the recognition that there's more to sport than running and jumping. For more than 60 years, we focused on participating in multi-sport events. So every time we do a budget, it's about athletes going to the Olympic, going to the World Cup, going to championships, sporting championships. And we've never looked at the back end. So we look at all the other countries that are winning tons of medals, and we're not winning those medals. And we've never stopped to interrogate why. So I'm just going to use one example. So we started going to the Olympics the same time Kenya started going to the Olympics. And it's like 68 years going by. 2026 will be like 72 years or something like that. And Kenya has over 130 medals, of which about 50 are gold medals. And we have 3 gold medals. And no one has bothered to interrogate why. But Kenya has 20,000 centers for training centers for long distance training. 20,000. So they've got a back end. Kenya Running developed 2 new cities in Kenya where the real estate, the rate is higher than any other city in Kenya, Eldoret and Iten. Kenya got the World Athletics to actually endorse 2 facilities in Kenya as world-class, high-class performance centers out of 7 global. Why? Because there was a back end. Okay. Kenya's Olympic starts in week 2. These days they don't bother about boxing or anything. They just count their medals from week 2 of the Olympics. We are all over the place. Some days we go for gymnastics, some days we go for horse riding, some days we're not experts. So we are a jack of all trades. And so we've participated with 24 sports, and yet we have only 3. So in terms of we're spreading our joy, we're not even able to maximize that spread. Why? There is no back end. So this country requires about 8,000 community facilities. We have less than 8,000. So how are you going to get the progression from raw talent to finished product? So what's happening now is fantastic in the sense that the government federal government first, is admitting and pushing an agenda for industrialization. So there's a focus on the sports economy. What does that mean? There's a focus on the business of sport, because it's the business of sport that will drive the participation part. That's number one. So they're focusing on the economy. And who do you need to when you focus on the economy. You need an army of professionals. So you need the lawyers, you need the accountants, you need the investors, you need the real estate developers, you need all those people. You don't necessarily need the sports people. And I always tell people, and they don't like this, that there is a difference between the business and the practice of sport. Just that there is a difference between the business and practice of medicine, which is why in a hospital you have a hospital administrator, running the hospital, and the doctor and the cardiologist and everybody can practice their specialty, but there's an administrator. What we don't have in sports is that separation. We've got to separate, quote unquote, church from state. Now that is happening. So you separate the business of sport from the practice of sport and address the issues affecting both of them in such a way that eventually there will be a convergence.
So now that this has been done,
yes,
how much pressure is on? How much pressure is on this particular board, the chairman Shehu Diko, the DG Bokolo Lokpade, and the rest of his army? How much pressure are on them to deliver? Because if this experiment fails, then people will be clamoring that we go back to status quo.
What is status quo?
Having the Ministry of
Sports. We can't ever go back to Egypt. Egypt is not the answer.
So there was a time of course there was a time that both existed side by side, talking about the Ministry of Sport and the National Sports Commission. And well, what we've seen over the years is that we do not have administrators like you mentioned.
There's a huge capacity gap in everything.
So hence my question that I was going to ask. I know personally what you've been able to do over the years.
Yeah.
We know what Shehu Diko has been able to do over the years in terms of capacity development.
Yes.
If that generation passes, who are the people that are coming that will be able to fit into those shoes? Because we look at someone like Elot Cole, for example, Sebastian Cole. Look at what he's been able to do for himself ever since leaving the Olympics till this particular point in time, that he's gone in for the biggest office in the land. Office in sports. Look at
the biggest office in sports participation.
Okay, sports participation.
Let's be clear.
Okay, and we look at even Thomas Bach, the man that is in the office right now. These are people that did probably a particular sport, but because of capacity building, they've been able to rise.
Okay, so the question you need to ask is, first and foremost, let me reiterate, we're not going back to Egypt. We will move forward by recognizing what needs to be done. I'm very glad that the National Sports Commission, one of the first things when we reached out to them, they were very happy to partner on this because they recognized two things: that a platform like the Sports Africa Investment Summit is necessary for sport.
Okay.
Why do we say that? We are the largest of the creative industry. We are 70% of the creative industry, and yet we are the part of the creative industry that does not have a gathering point. The other parts across Africa. So entertainment, music, creatives, they come. Afrexim Bank has been able to gather them under Canex. So every year in October, they come together, discuss their problems, look at where they are, and get funding. So they've got this fund, and every year, Afrexim Bank has been adding $1 billion every year. Last year, they added an extra $1 billion. So right now, that fund is $3 billion. Yet, we're 70% of the creative. But they give us one small session, breakout session, one tiny breakout session. And then we come there because we've not shown them our power. So we say, no problem. Let's have our own. Let's have a place where we sit down, identify what the issues are. Is it a mass participation strategy we want? Who are the people we need in the room? So for the Sports Africa Investment Summit, we have the development agencies. We're saying to them, you are interested in social impact. Come, let's deliver social impact by encouraging more people to play sport. Across Africa, if we can encourage just about half the population, where a median age is 19.4 years. So if you get somebody at the age of 6, 7 years joining you to start playing sport, you have that person for about 50 years. So you can build passion, you can build a relationship that sees retail, everything. That is a market. So first and foremost, let's get the development agencies to assist in building a market. So the first plenary session is about how do we encourage mass participation by looking at education. Education is the biggest contributor. It contributes 48% to the number of people who play. Then we look at health. Health contributes through fitness, another 15%. So if you add 48% to 15%, you are approaching nearly 70% market. Now, let's look at the African population. So if we say we want 700 million, 70% of 700 million is nearly about 500 million people.
Yes.
And if you can find a way to get 500 million people to spend 50 cents a day, the economy is built. So what do we need to do? So that's where we look at it. How do we encourage more women to play sport? So that's the first. The second part is about the reforms needed. You say all of these things, but you need your federations to be reformed. You need your continental federations to work hand in hand with your... let's not go to the federation conversation.
Because I would like to...
No, in a nutshell, I was going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So you need corporate governance, you need administration, you need management, you need the products. What product are you creating? So entertainment comes into the mix. How do you make entertainment, tech, and sport media to work for sports? How do you... People like Maxwell Kalu, of the Dambe fame, he's coming to describe why his product, he just received investment for expanding the scope of his products across. So how do we get people like that to create for us so we can consume? That's the second part. What are the reforms needed? Then the third part is, okay, so we get number one and number two, right? Where is the money? So we have to have the money conversation. That how much do we need? From estimates from some of the research we've done, Africa needs about $5 billion every year for the next 10 years.
To be
injected into the system.
Would that get us competitive enough?
Oh, certainly. Because you see the
to
growth,
rival
the
some
growth
of the biggest
area,
in the world.
you need to see some of the stats. The growth area over the next 50 years is Africa. We have the lowest median population, 19.4 years.
No, but okay, so
we are going to supply.
Permit me to interject because
right.
you talk about our population.
Yeah.
But we are being, for lack of a better word, we are being harvested to profit other nations.
How many are you that are being harvested? You know, sometimes we
the Olympics was a glaring example.
We create a bogeyman out of this situation. The data doesn't support your fears.
Okay.
Nigeria can comfortably supply athletes for 100 countries and still compete at the highest level against those countries if we do the right things. So right now we are not supplying to 100 countries, are we? So we tend to panic when we see one or two things. Then we don't interrogate the data. When you interrogate the data, there is no need to fear. What you need to do is to get your back end working well. And your back end is make sure the facilities are available at community level. Redefine what grassroots mean. You know, when I see people define grassroots as under 17, under 14, I have a good laugh. Grassroots is me and you, Aaron. I want to play. I want to go to work and in the evening go to a fitness center.
Okay.
Where do I live? I live in a community. Therefore, I am grassroots. I am never going to line up at the 100 meters line at the Olympics to compete for the 100 meters dash. I will visit the Olympics as a spectator. But that doesn't mean I don't want to experience sport. Therefore, if you put something at the community level, I must be able, as a grassroots person, to enjoy it. So let's redefine grassroots, and suddenly the market becomes like this. We've been defining grassroots as under 13, under 15, under 7. That's such a narrow definition. We don't take care of people like you and people like me. So we are redefining that. That's number one.
Okay.
Then secondly, you've now put the capacity structures, development structures in place. So I want, if all states decide to make, each state decides to make a law, because education is under them, under state, it's not under federal. Every state makes a law that every child must play sport twice a week. And any school that has 400 students in their school must have a games master. And please, I'm not talking about the physics teacher that just happened to play football. No, they just happened to play football when he was in the university.
Okay.
No, a physical education teacher I would take, but the physics teacher who just happened to play for his school, play football from his school. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody who has at least experienced 1 or 2 years training as a games master. If you now say every school must have a games master, we're going to need 100,000 games masters. We don't have 10,000. So somebody must scale up the process of producing 90,000 games masters in shortest possible time. And every day we say job creation, jobs. Just make one law. You, the private school owner, you must have a physical education teacher. You must have somewhere you play so we don't have facility in my school. Therefore, we put the community facilities in place. If there are 10 schools in a community, 2 will play on Monday, 2 will play on Tuesday. You know, that's planning. So let's plan that. Let's ensure that coaches have a pathway. If I can't play pro, when I start at grassroots, I'm coming like this. This path leads me to pro career. This path will now lead me to coaching career. I must be able at this point to decide whether it is here or here. And if I choose here, there must be the facilities. So that's the third thing.
Okay, permit me, because of time, we're almost out of time already. And because I see the array of partners you have for
Fantastic,
this.
yes.
Afrexim Bank of Industry. The
First, our co-host, National Sports Commission.
Okay, the National Sports Commission.
And we are grateful to them for seeing the opportunity in this. Yes.
The International Center for Sports Security.
Yes,
UN Global Compact Network, NESH Foundation, the National Economic Summit Group.
Yeah.
These are movers and shakers of the industry.
Yeah.
Where are the monies going to come from? Are we going to be getting pledges to fund sports in Africa? Is the big question.
Okay, so
because you mentioned Carnex at the beginning of this conversation,
yes.
And we usually have hard pledges on ground.
Okay, so here's the thing.
Yes.
We've never held this before.
Okay.
But African Bank has dipped their toe in the water.
Okay.
And they are coming. They're not coming there because they like my face. They are coming there that, okay, you've made an interesting proposition. We are the trade bank of Africa. So let's come and see whether there are trade opportunities so that we can invest. That's number one.
Okay.
Then we're still in conversations with the likes of the African Development Bank, who have a 10-year development plan under which sports has been put in infrastructure.
Okay.
So they're not putting sports for performance. It's infrastructure. So those people are there. We're also talking to other financial institutions and investment firms. But what is the most interesting is that they're not coming to talk. So we have 2 major projects. I'm going to allow you, this Arise is scooping everybody else. There are 2 major projects. The very first sports special economic zone in Africa.
Oh.
Yes, 500 hectares.
Wow. Nigeria
is going to host it. And I'm going to allow the states to unveil themselves, but it's going to be presented. It's a multi-million-dollar investment project over the next 15, 20 years. That's number one. The second one is Sport Nigeria's commitment to contributing to the stock of community facilities. We need about 8,000. We are committed to 3,000 over 10 years. Wow. And we're presenting the Spaces for Sport program. We are believing that Nigeria will serve as the pilot to deploy it across Africa, because Africa requires 50,000 of those things. Africa requires 1,200 stadiums just to catch up. Africa requires between 3 and 15 million jobs, 5 and 15 million jobs to be created out of the sports sector.
Now, finally, for me, before we actually wrap it up, we're already hard pressed for time. The National Economic Summit Group will be there.
Certainly.
These eggheads, I know you're close to them. These eggheads.
I'm the thematic lead for the sports industry thematic group. Yes.
These eggheads have shaped policies, economic policies in Nigeria.
They've unlocked sectors.
Yes.
Yes.
Are they just coming to participate, or will they start resonating to the government? Because I will never forget, someone told me that a very prominent member of government once said that sports, I said, not you just keep this, why are we wasting money on sports?
That's why it's not beyond the NESG, and the NESG has led this drive. The NESG led the drive to getting the very first sports industry policy in Africa. It was when we approved the the National Sports Industry Policy in 2022 that people across Africa were calling and saying this is the very first one in Africa. Okay. And that's what actually has led us to the SAIS. But beyond the NESG is the Sports Commission. Okay. The Sports Commission is the federal government's representative in this conversation. The Sports Commission is supposed to deliver the incentives. The policy has been delivered. So it's supposed to deliver the incentives, some of which have been delivered, but the rest. And the Sports Commission is supposed to bring all the public sector partners. So why do we need the public sector partners? Sports requires 14 ministries to be in the room just so we can get this going. And the Sports Commission in co-hosting has signified its intention to make sure all public sector partners are in the room. We will make sure private sector and development agencies are in the room. So the three main stakeholder groups will now be in the room working with all the sub-stakeholder groups like media, legal, construction, real estate development, capacity development, education, all of that. We must all sit down and chart a course.
All right, what should we expect, the low-hanging fruit from this?
The report from this should chart a course for gender inclusivity, ensuring more women, strategies for more women and girls playing sport. Mass participation, how do we increase the number of people playing sport so we can deliver a market for goods and services. We will deliver 2 major projects. One of them is commercial, which is the 500 hectare. Wow. That's a commercial hectare. Technically speaking, it's a new city, sports city, the very first targeted sports city, not the sports city we used to call the stadium. This is now a sports 500 hectares is 1.5 times Unilag. So that's the size of what you're delivering. And that's for manufacture of goods so that we can service that market we've created. And then we will deliver community facilities under S4S. Then the rest is where the money is. And some of the speakers we have gathered together will tell us where the money comes from.
I thought we would have time to talk about other things. We've not been able to. We've not even scratched the surface. Certainly, we'll.
No, but I always, the thing is that when both of us, when I come here, it becomes a conversation.
Yes, it does.
Yes, and we'll keep on having. I'm very happy. By the way, I'm very happy that Arise is with us on this. You guys have been tremendous in supporting us, spreading the word, and I think that by the time the summit rolls around, and we finish and we do these things, it will signal a better cooperation between public and private sector.
I want to say thank you very much, NkechiObi, for your time here.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.